Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the official start of this webinar based and focusing on Sage Intacct. As you know, Sage Intacct is a powerful cloud-based accounting software solution, and today we will have an in-depth look at the functionality, but also a live demo. I'm just going to run through a few formalities before we start with the presentation. The agenda for today is an overview of a product features, which is going to explain how everything fits together and what Sage Intacct can possibly do for your business, followed by a live demo and a Q&A session. The reason for the session is to give you an insight about what Sage Intacct can solve for your business. It has powerful functionality, especially in the financial processing and reporting part, but it's something which we will look at during the live demo. Questions during the session is more than welcome. Please look on your interface. There's a Q&A button, which you can press and select the option, ask a question, where you can then type. Jenny from Preferred Solutions will either answer you on the Q&A, or we will leave it to the live Q&A session where Neo, the presenter, will then answer it for you. As mentioned, our presenter for today is Neo. She is a pre-sales engineer from Sage South Africa. I'm going to leave it to her to properly introduce herself during the session. And I'm going to give over to Neo to start. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. As mentioned, my name is Neo Tlatrayo. I am from Sage and I am the pre-sales for Intacct. And today we are going to be doing an overview of the solution, and then thereafter we can then go through a Q&A. What we can answer today, we will answer. What we cannot answer, we promise to get back to you with the answers. Thank you so much. We can go on to the next slide and start if everybody is ready. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so on our screen, we have a beautifully looking diagram, which is a cloud diagram, funny enough, but Sage Intacct is born in the cloud. We are 100% native cloud, which means we do not need any servers or any sort of hardware for us to be able to log into the system. We only just need a device, and to the device, we need a working Wi-Fi or working internet, and then you have access to the system. We use something that we call multi-dimensional accounting, and if you are using one of our legacy systems, you would be calling these segments, but this is just our cost center reporting that we have now made better, and we don't need to create a lot of accounts and link them to segments for us to be able to tag certain dimensions or certain department or certain cost centers. Sage Intacct is a best of breed, and we use open API capabilities to connect to your third-party systems or integrate to your third-party systems. It can be payroll, it can be CRM system, whatever system that you use. Some of my clients have been using a claim system for their insurance companies, and we are able to seamlessly connect to Sage Intacct using our open API capabilities. What I love the most about it is that it is user-friendly and it's colorful. I like to believe that I think in color, so it's colorful, it works for me. It's user-friendly. I call it a click of a button system because everything is so easy and you just need to click on it. But we will see that when we log into the system just now. To my right, possibly to your left, we have a cloud diagram. Sage Intacct is not a blanket approach type of system. We play into different industry verticals, some of those being accounting, franchise, nonprofit, wholesalers. And as you would know, with most of our legacy systems, it is a stock standard system. And then from there on, we need to make it work for all the industries. Whereas with Sage Intacct, we play into different industry verticals. For instance, if you are a nonprofit company, Instead of using projects, for instance, you will use grants, you'll have donors. So the language on the nonprofit is totally different to a normal finance accounting that we would do. Then we have our core financials. In our core financials, these come stock standard with the system. It's our core modules. They include APAR, GL, Collaborate, and Collaborate is just a communication feature where we are able to communicate either internally or externally about any task that needs to be done. So you can, for instance, communicate to your customer and say, "Hi, Mr. Customer, you have owed us for over 90 days. Please advise when you are paying." And to the same effect, you can communicate internally to say, "Hi, Neil, please explain to me what is happening on this journal transaction, or please reverse line whatever on the journal." That is what the collaboration feature does. We have our cash management, which is widely known as our cash book transactions. Then we obviously have our reports, and we have added a dashboard to those reports. And to my right, we also have additional modules that you can, over and above, add to our core financials. These modules don't have to be faced in on the first instance of implementation. They can be faced in later on as your business scale and grows. And our additional modules include projects, fixed assets, multi-entity and global consolidation, time and expense management, and so on and so forth. We can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. And then on the next slide, we have our dimensions. And this is what we were referring to when I was saying then this is where we let go of our sub accounts. However, we can still account for them using dimensions and dimension tags. On the system, we have standard dimensions that come stock standard with the system, some of those being items, class, vendor, department. And as much as they come standard with the system, you are not forced to be using them as they are. They are configurable and you can rename them according to your business processes and your day-to-day business. Over and above that, we have user-defined dimensions where you are able to then add or specify the dimensions that you would need internally as the user. And we have specialty dimensions that you can add to our add-on modules, being project warehousing and contracts. We also do use a dependent model of it. You can have a parent and child relationship to the modules. Thank you so much. Can now move. Perfect. So let's move to the actual project, the actual product demo, and see what we were referring to on the slide. I am going to share my screen. Please do give me a thumbs up as soon as you can see my screen. And yes, Chantal, you have a hand raised. Oh, perfect. There we go. Okay. So on my screen, I have our login screen, or our login page, whichever you would refer to. And if you are using one of our legacy systems, you would then notice the difference where it comes to company ID. So for instance, if you are using Sage Evolution, you would have a drop down here. Then you would have a list of companies that you would need to log into. If you're using Sage 50 or Sage Partner, then you would have a list of companies that you would need to log into. On Sage Intacct, you will never have any of those because we are multi-entity compatible, which means you only ever need to log into your top entity, and within your temp entity, you can access your sub entities. If you have multiple entities, but they are individual companies, then you will then have a different instance to log into every time you are logging in. To that, we have our unique user ID and password where you would need to log in, because ultimately at the end of the day, we need to have an audit trail of who logged in and did what on the system. But before we log into the system, I would like to show you something that we call uptime. It is a native cloud system. So with native clouds, people tend to get jittery and tend to have worries. And if you are like me and you don't like working hard, but you like working smart, and I'm in IT and I know how IT departments can get. I wouldn't want to go into the IT department and ask, why is my system slow? So we have something that we call uptime. In our uptime, we give you a couple of stats. So for instance, here, it started on the 22nd of October to date, which is the November 5th. We are giving an average response time. So for instance, today it took me 0.376 seconds as average response time. This means this is the time that takes me to move between modules or to process a transaction or run a report on the system. And as you can see, it gives you an average on specific days, and they are different, right? But anything can affect these stats. It can be my network, it can be literally anything that can be affecting this. However, even though you can tell that they are not the same, the status is still within normal operations. So for instance, anything with a tick is normal operations. Anything that would have an exclamation mark means there was a disruption, and then we would need to check on it. Over and above that, if we move to the bottom of the screen, we have overall monthly availability. With most of our legacy systems, when there is an upgrade or an update, there would need to be a downtime because the server cannot be working. Excuse me, the server cannot be working because we are now doing an upgrade or an update. In Sage Intacct, we don't have to have any of that. Everything that happens in the background while you are working, which means we are guaranteeing you an availability per month of at least 99.9 or 99.8% uptime. So you don't ever need to worry about downtimes. And this is where my colleagues likes to say I am modest. But should this go beyond the threshold of about 80 and below, then you are guaranteed a portion of your subscription back and paid to you back. And they say I am modest because we put our money where our mouth is. And as you can tell, from November 2024 to date, which is October, we have not had any disturbances in our productivity or availability for a specific month. Okay, so I am going to close that, and then let's log into the system. Any questions so far about what we have spoke about? Please do submit them on the chat box, and then we will deal with them. Okay, so now I've logged into the system, and this is what I call my landing page, and I call it my for a reason, because it does not have to be the same for the next user in the company. In this specific example, I'm the CFO and I want to see a global view of the company. I now have dashboards as my landing page. If you would like the landing page to be something completely different, you can have that as the next user. But in my case, I'm the CFO. We are doing inter-entity transactions, or we have multiple entities, and I would like to have a view of where the company stands globally. Then my landing page is dashboards. Our dashboards are highly configurable. You can have smiley faces, you can have emojis, you can have different colors. And I think I did mention earlier that I think in color, so everything of mine will be very colorful, because then I know if I see orange, if I see turquoise and green, I know we were referring to a trend that was related to a global reporting. So this literally is a bird's eye view that gives you real-time visibility into where the business position stands. And it is up to the minute, which means Sage Intacct is, I like to refer it as a smart system, and it's live. So whatever happens on the system, if I'm viewing this now at 315655, and there is a posting that would directly affect the direct labor cost, this amount would change as and when I'm viewing it. Okay, so we have different types of graphs that you can see or that you can look into. We have line graphs, we have bar graphs, we have pie charts, and so on and so forth. These are configurable in a sense that you are able to then put in more filters. You can duplicate them and copy into the next one. If, for instance, you say, I'm not very good with graphs. I want to see the actual data. You are able to say show graph, and then the system will show you the actual amounts that went into those specific periods or months. Then you can go back into seeing your graphs. Over and above that, we are able to drill down to a specific amount. So for instance, we can say, okay, our operating expenses went up by 26.14% versus our prior month. I want to see what makes up that specific amount. The system will then give you a comprehensive total of what makes up that amount. To that amount, you can say, I'm not quite sure what's happening here, but why is our meals and entertainment amount so high? You are then able to drill down and say, I want to see what makes up that 14,551.95 amount. The system will take you to the general ledger report of what gives you that specific amount. If you are still not sure and saying, why do we then have funny amounts? Why do I have 133.26? I want to see where it comes from. You are then able to drill down into that specific amount and say, I want to see where it comes from. Then the system will take you to a journal ledger or a journal entry where that specific transaction was processed. We have our collaboration feature where you will usually have it there. Mine is not there, but I will show it to you on another instance where you can then say to the user, I'm logged in as Emma. You can say to Emma, hi, Emma, please explain to me what is happening on line 74. Why is the travel so high? Please reverse it. When Emma then receives that email, Emma will click on that email link, and then it will take her directly to this journal entry in question. She does not need to click between 5 modules to get to a journal entry that she might not even know what the number is. I will show you all of that in a different instance. We had an upgrade, and then I now need to reinstate mine, but we'll see it just now. So the system will take you to a source entry. A source entry also does not only refer to a journal. It can be a bill that was paid. It can be an invoice that was processed. It can be whatever that we would be looking at. Ultimately, you can send it to Excel or you can print it. In this case, we'll just let it go, or you can send an email to whoever that would need to receive that specific transaction. Let me just close that. Let me close that as well. Our dashboards are role-based, which then means as a company, you wouldn't want everybody to see the company's financial position. Because as Neo, if I see that we are making so much money, I can come back and say, why you pay me 20 Rand if we're making so much money as a company? So they are role-based in the sense that you can then decide as a company who has access and who does not have access to specific dashboards. If we go and look at the controller dashboards, for instance, you will see it look completely different. Maybe not completely, but there are things that are different. You can do a comparison where you are saying, I want to see my actual versus budget on my profit and loss. Anything that is blue and hyperlinked, you are able to drill down on and then do an analysis if you would need to do an analysis in terms of what makes up that specific amount. Or total. Within that, you can still say, why is this amount so high? I want to see what makes up or where it comes from. Then you can drill down further to what makes up that specific transaction. Okay. This is still a journal entry. And again, with a bird's eye view, you can just see that now our AP is 9 point whatever million compared to our AR. What is our cash on hold? What is our inter-entity company revenue if you are doing inter-entity transactions to that effect? Again, our dashboards are not only limited to rows. You are able to do a outcome dashboards to say, okay, I want to see what is the outcome of my staffing. If you go to that, then we will see what is your medical staffing revenue, what is your accounting revenue, what is your admin, and so on and so forth. Then you would be able to see per employee, per department, what are we doing? What are we spending money on? Are we making money? Are we losing money? And to any of those, if you would like to drill down to the actual cost to say, okay, I want to drill down to that. then the system will take you to a general ledger report. Okay, so that is our dashboards. Again, they are role-based. So if you would like to see anything over and above CFO, you can then say, okay, I want to see my project manager. Then the details on that dashboard will be project manager related or projects related. And the other features of dashboards is that we are able to do some tasks on the fly. Here on the, for instance, we have a project manager dashboard where we can create a project, we can create a task, or you can find a resource. So if I click here and create a project, it will take me directly to the project screen where I can then add a new project over and above what I have, or I can edit or view projects that are already existing. So there's just functions we can create on the fly. It is not limited to this. You can do whatever. If it's an AR manager desktop or dashboard, you can then create functions on the fly to say, I want to pay a bill, I want to receive, or I want to, whatever it is that you decide as the company. Okay, so that is our dashboards. And over and above our dashboards, when we are logging in, I did say that with Sage Intacct, you don't need to have a couple of companies that you need to log on and off to log into. We then have something that we call multi-entity, and we can do inter-entity transactions. This is where you would access all of those entities. I'm logged into my top level as my menu screen says, and if I click on that drop down, I have all those other entities that I can then access and log into. If you have users like Neo who are quick fingers and are prone to make mistakes, you can change colors for each entity. So for instance, if I go to entity 1 and entity 2, as you can see, the colors are different. In my entity 2, my colors are very green, whereas in my entity 1, my colors are red. But besides the color, you don't have to then have worries, because details on the Sage Intacct can be restricted or unrestricted based on the entity. So for instance, you can say, I want this supplier to only be available in entity 1, or they can be available in entity 2, or they can be available in top level entity. So if the supply is restricted to entity 1, for instance, you don't need to, you will not be able to access that supply in entity 2, which means the transactions you are making in this specific entity will be related to that specific supplier, or whatever information has been restricted to that specific entity. When you are giving your user access and permissions, you can give them permissions to specific entities depending on what the business process is and what your day-to-day life looks like in terms of processing and operations. So you can give users specific entities to specific entities, and what they would be able to transact on. And as you can see, I have opened 2 entities, but the system does not restrict me in terms of how many can open for that specific company. So you can open as many entities as you would like. Then you don't need to worry about users making mistakes, because details in that specific entity will be details related to that entity. So whenever I am processing to supplier A, that supplier A, if it only belongs into the holding company, then that's where I will see it, but I wouldn't be able to access it in any other entities from there on. Before we go into the roles, I would like to talk about something that I personally call the building blocks of the system. So with Sage Intacct, we have 4 releases each year, which means we have 1 each quarter, right? And if you're familiar with our legacy systems, we have an upgrade, I think once a year, or it depends on what we need to fix and what is upgraded. But with Sage Intacct, we are promising you 1 release each quarter. This is not to say we are fixing any bugs or problems or defects. Sage Intacct is one of our flagship products, which then means a lot of our R&D cost goes into it, right? So there's a lot of development that is done into Sage Intacct, and it being a smart system with your AIs and machine learnings, we need to constantly make sure that we are keeping up to the industry standard. So we have 1 release each quarter, making 4 a year, right? To that, we have our help center, where we have a video library. This is where you can access snippet videos of simple tasks. So for instance, you want to add a supplier, or you want to add a recurring payment bill, or you want to add a bill approval. You can then go in and then play a snippet video, which will then take you through what you need to do or how you need to access that specific function. I am going to close that for now. Over and above that, we also have release notes. For each release, we have release notes that you can go into and read what are the enhancements on for this specific one. Let's look at the AP automation. If you look at the AP automation, there is a read up where it tells you what is the enhancements, how does it work, and where do you access it. Then it gives you a little diagram where it tells you in which subscription. So in Intacct World, subscription literally means modules. In which modules is it available? In which region is it available? So Sage Intacct is a global product. So some of the features are not going to be available in all regions, but they are going to be in some regions. Also, because we do things differently. The US does tax completely different to what we are doing in South Africa, for instance. So then it depends on what the enhancements is, and does it apply to all regions or specific regions. This specific one allows to or applies to all regions, and which user types are able to access that enhancement. In Sage Intacct, we don't have standard basic users. We have different types of users. We have a business user, for instance, which are typically your admin users. We have limited business users, which are your admin users, but with limited rights. We have project manager users. We have employee users, and all of those have different functions in the system. What permissions can you allow or restrict for those specific users? And what is the configuration needed for you to have access to the specific enhancement? If we go back, you are like, no, you don't like reading. Again, I like working smart and not working hard. I would literally just prefer a video over me having to read all of that. This video comprises of everything that you would find here, but it's in video form. So you can just watch a video. It does have volume. I've just switched it off so we can be able to hear each other. This video will then give you all the steps that you would get if you are reading. So we are then catering for both. If you are like Neo and you are lazy, you don't like working too hard and reading, you are able to then watch a video on that. So let me just go back there. Okay, sorry, let me just go back to my help center. Over and above the video library and release notes, we do have a training center. This is literally our Sage University training that I myself as Neil from Sage would go through. And everybody on the team from Preferred Solution would also go through. But again, it depends on which user you are. This is where you record your or you register your users to the portal. They can then do training. Once they've done training, they can ultimately get certified should they wish to be certified. We also have a support community that you can log your cases into. Again, it is a global product, so return time or response time might differ to us in South Africa, but that's why you have the team from Preferred Solutions to help you with that. Okay. So that is the building blocks. We have gone through multi-entity, but before we leave multi-entity, we also have something that we call inter-entity mapping. For companies that do inter-entity transactions, this is an inter-entity mapping that we would set up once off. At the point of implementation, we tell the system, when we have an inter-entity transaction, these are the accounts that you are going to effect. They are not cast in stone. Things change. So if something change, we can obviously amend it as and when we need to. Excuse me. So if you are doing a loan between the inter-entities, you don't need to worry about processing a journal and having to remember what account do you need to effect. You can just do an inter-entity mapping, then the system will know if we are doing this transaction, this is the account I'm going to effect, and this is the contract account I'm going to effect, and so on and so forth. And over and above this, we also have something that we call consolidation, because when we do inter-entity transaction with most of our legacy systems, you find that you still need to go onto Excel to do a specific consolidation report. Where else on Sage Intacct, we don't want you to do Excel. Please, we want you to be smart. We want you to be effective. We want efficiency. We have a consolidation feature where you can consolidate between your entities. We have two types of consolidation. So we've got a global consolidation. On a global consolidation, if you are using multi-currency, that's where global consolidation comes in. So then we are telling the system, we have global consolidation or multi-entity. So you need to consolidate my companies using all of those currencies that we are catering for in the system. So if you have a Malawi, US, UK, whatever it is, a dollar, a pound, and Naira, whatever it is that you are using, then the system will consolidate that for you at a click of a button. You can then select, are you consolidating for all entities or are you consolidating for a specific entity? What is your period range that you are consolidating for? Then we have also something that we call domestic consolidation. With domestic consolidation, this is where we are now using a single currency. So you don't do multi-entity, we are operating in ZAR, or we are operating in dollars, or we are operating in Naira, whatever it is that you are operating in, but you are using single entity for your company. Then you can then do a domestic consolidation. So with your global consolidation, the system will do your reevaluations and all of those calculations and then automatically post an adjustment journal should there be a need to post that adjustment journal. With your domestic consolidation, we are literally just consolidating different entities into one. Then the system will then calculate that for you. If you have reoccurrences that you would like to set up, then you are able to set up that and tell the system, I want you to consolidate either monthly, weekly, or daily. What is the consolidation period end? And then if you would like it to recur on a specific date or month, this is where you then specify it. And the system will send you an email based on the findings or based on the consolidation that you are doing. So for instance, if you are doing a consolidation and for whatever reason it fails, the system will send you an email to say this consolidation did not run based on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or the consolidation was successful. You are able to then do that. So you can set a recurrence consolidation, or you can do it manually as and when you would like to consolidate. Okay. So here we have our applications menu. So if you are on Sage 200 or Sage 50, you would know that on your system tree, you get a list of all your modules. So here, this is just a list of all of our modules that we use in Sage Intacct. And if you do remember when we started, we do have standard modules that we work on. Then over and above that, we have modules that can be an added extra, being fixed asset projects, time and expense, and the likes. For now, if we just go back to our company, I have been speaking a lot about Sage Intacct being a role-based system. We are very good in segregation of duties, but what separates us is that in Sage Intacct, we set roles or access permissions per role instead of per user. Because as we know, employees come and go, right? So if Neo is employed in the company, say as an AR manager, we can say, okay, this is the role that we are setting for our AR manager roles or group. We give them permission to specific modules. In those specific modules, we can still go in and further classify what I am able to do or restricted to do, to say, okay, they have access to general ledger permissions, but within that, I just want them to be able to run reports, list, or view. So it's almost like a read and write. And Contrary to the general ledger, if we go to order entry, for instance, and we go to permissions, I want them to be able to add, edit, and delete customers, for instance. Or I don't want them to be able to add item GL groups or delete them or edit them. So these permissions are role-based, which means when Neo leaves the company, God forbid, the Neo or the next replacement that comes, if let's say for instance, Neo leaves, Johan joins, you can then just create Johan as a user and then link or allocate Johan to the specific roles and subscription. To that, we are able to just have read and write permissions to the roles, either to your board members or your CFO or your auditors. So for instance, if we look at our CFO read and write, so this CFO does not necessarily need to process anything on the system, but we need them to have access to all of these modules. However, within those modules, for instance, if we go into general ledger, what do we want the CFO group to do? Do we want them to list and view only, but they cannot add, edit, or delete anything on the system? We will talk about scheduling reports to auditors or a group of board members later, but with the access to the system, you are able to say, I only want them to have read and write. They can have access to the system, but they cannot be processing, editing, or deleting anything. Okay, so that is our roles. And obviously, depending on what access permission you have, your modules that you have access to will be different depending on the role that you have. So for instance, if let's say I want to go into an employee user, for instance, I just want to show you how it looks like. And as you would see, a lot of things look broken and different. This user specifically does not have any dashboards that are assigned to them. And as you can see on the applications menu, it is looking broken and like there's almost none, because this user specifically only has access to the specific applications or modules. So let me just go back to Emma. Okay, so that's where we were at. And before we move from here, I would like to introduce you to the concept of dimensions. So what we call as dimensions in Sage Intacct, you might call as sub-accounts in one of our legacy systems. So in Sage Intacct, you ever only need to create one account. So if you have a rental expense account and you have multi-entity companies that span across, let's say, Johannesburg, Cape Town, PE, Mpumalanga, you don't need to create 4 accounts and tag them to those. You only ever need one account. What then this does is that it streamlines your GL accounts. Let me just show you. It streamlines your GL accounts and automatically means when you are running reports, these reports are then going to be streamlined. Your reports are not going to take 30 minutes. Instead, they'll probably take 5 minutes because you only have one report. You don't have this huge chart of accounts that you would need to run reports for. This is how our chart of accounts would look like. Then to these accounts, you then tag transactions. What I mean by that, if I go into our journal entries, this is what our journal screen would look like. You would obviously need to select what type of journal you are making. In our example, we are making a general journal. What is your posting date? Is it today? Is it tomorrow? Is it yesterday? If you do have an automatic reversal date, this usually applies to your recurring transactions. If you do have an automatic reversal date, you can put it in there. What is the description of the journal entry? If you have any further comments that you would like to put, you can put them on there. Any reference number, source entity. So this is where your multi-entity comes in. I'm logged into top level. From top level, I can then transact into our other entities, provided that what I'm transacting or the master files I'm transacting are not restricted to a specific entity, and I can transact into them using the top level or from the top level. You are able to attach supporting documents should you have any text implications for the specific transactions. Are you implicating text or not? You would select that. The show spend insight we will talk about more when we are going into our purchasing module. You then select your account. So let's say we are then selecting, let's say, an inventory account, right? So we are then saying we are doing an inventory transaction for our Johannesburg office. Actually, let's make a rent expense. So we are saying we are processing rent for our Johannesburg office in department marketing. If you do have technicians and employees that you would like to tag onto this, you can. In class, let's say it is a service line. If you have a customer that you would like to attach to this transaction, you can do that. If you have a project as well that you would like to tag to this transaction, you can select the project. So where the power of dimensions comes in is that I can process a same transaction. However, I am now doing it for our Cape Town office. In department IT, I actually would like to now select an employee. I don't want class. I don't need a customer. I can then say I want to select a specific project. So what then this does is, like I said earlier, it streamlines your chart of accounts. When you are running your reports, you can then say, I want to run a report for that specific account. However, these are the dimensions that I want to run that specific report for. You then can submit the journal either for approval or for posting, or you can save it as a draft to post later. That's where the power of dimensions come in. And every time and again, you will see that there is a flow that comes into my screen. Instead of going back here, it's still the same. So whatever I would find here, I would then get it on an overview level or a diagram level. This is just the workflow to show you this is what we have. These are the tasks that we can do within this module, and these are the reports that we can print. They are not limited to what we see here. You can able to see more reports. For instance, each GL or sub GL or sub ledger, we have our standard reports, and over and above that, you can customize reports for that. Okay, so quickly moving on to our cash management. This is literally what we would call in our legacy system as cash book transactions. I just want to pull through a different instance. So what happens then on our cash management is that you are able to then create a couple of your accounts. We don't restrict you in which accounts you would create. To that account, you have a couple of transactions that you can process, can be deposits, transfers, and all of that. Then you can ultimately do your reconciliation. So what we then have on Sage Intacct is that we have something that we call bank feeds. Again, with most of our legacy systems, your bank transactions, you would need to manually import or export your bank file and then import it into the system. Whereas with Sage Intacct, our bank feeds allows us to automatically import those transactions for you. So I know when we say this, a lot of our customers get a bit iffy and jiffy about it. We are not connecting to your bank, but it's almost like your bank connecting to us. So instead of you exporting that file, the bank will send that file to us, and then the system then does the rest for you. And by the rest, I mean then the system will match your debits and credits from your bank, or your deposits and payment from your bank, to the debits and credits onto the system. So you don't have to do a manual export and import into the system. The system will do that for you. And that setup is only ever needed to be done once. Once that setup is done once, then the system will then say, okay, these are the transactions that come from your bank. We are now going to match them into the system. And to do all of that, we use something that we call our matching rules. Sorry, I just was pulling through a different instance. So how we do that is we have a set of matching rules where you tell the system, I want you to match this transaction, but please match it with a reference number, match it with a document number, match it with a customer or supplier. It depends. You just need to give us all of these matching rules. Then once you've given us that, we set it up for you together with your business partner, and then you can then take it from there. So if we go back into our banks, let's just use one of our current banks. We are going to edit one of it. Let's edit that one. Murphy is slow. It will give me errors. There we go. So if we then say, okay, this is the bank that is in question that we want to, you can connect to that bank, right? When you are connecting to that bank, as I have mentioned before, Sage Intacct is a global product. So if you are a US company, then these are the banks that we support. If for whatever reason the bank that you are using is not here, you still are able to search for it. In our case, I am going to go to South Africa. We support the big states of the bank, and these are all the banks that you can connect to. So for instance, if we were to select ABSA and then we go continue, I don't really have a bank to connect to. I just want to show you how it looks like. Then you put in all the information there. Then we are literally telling the system on a monthly basis or daily basis or fortnightly, please take the bank statements from the bank, dump it into my system, and then match it to my transaction. So this is how it would look like. You would put in your details. Once you put in your details, you submit. Again, this is a once off, right? And if you had noticed, I have selected it for a specific bank, which means you are not subjected or obliged to use ABSA alone. So if within a company you are using multiple banks, we can then go to each bank and then select the relevant bank to connect to from the system. Again, it does not only apply to your check transactions, it can be to credit card transactions and the likes. So from there on, if we go to our bank reconciliation, the system will then automatically reconcile your transaction and based on your rules, right? So your rules are now saying, please match this and this and this and that. However, the bank could not then match everything. This is not all lost and cast in stone. We could not match 9 of our transactions, but everything else the bank could transact, right? Then we are okay, the system could not pick up these. And from it not picking up that, we can then say, I can now manually go and match these transactions. So you can then say, I want to match all of them at the same time, right? Me wanting to match all of them at the same time, you can then say, okay, I want to click there, match all of them at the same time, then this number will go down. However, no, I don't want to match all of them. I'm sure and certain of 2 of them. You can then click there on the item selected box. Then we say, I want to do that. Then when you match that specific transaction, this number will go down. It will be 9 minus 2. Then the unmatched amount will also go down by what these 2 lines make, which in this case is 48,000 and 85,000, and so on and so forth. So if the system cannot match what is on your bank statement to what is on your Intacct, you still do have the functionality to match it manually. So you can then match it manually and say, this is what I would like to do. And then you match and reconcile it manually. In a sense, your unmatched transactions and unmatched amount will go down as much as your uncleared amount will also go down from that end. Okay, so from over and above that, you do have your normal transactions. You can do your deposits, you can do your funds transfers, you can do your credit card transactions, and so on and so forth. So moving from our cash management, we also do have a budget module. And with our budget module, we can go into a granular detail to say, which type of budgets would you like to add onto the system? In this specific example, we will then go into our master budget. We'll do let's say in this case, we are supplying gas to a Sasolburg mine. This is the budget master file that we can do. We can say, okay, we are budgeting for a specific account. In that specific account, we say for this department and location and class. And again, we only have those. However, you can go into nitty-gritty and granular level to say, I want it to be for a specific customer or a specific vendor or both. I want it to be for a specific employee to say when Neo enters transaction, please look at the specific budget and then say what is the budget and where are we. Again, in this specific example, it is for our inventory account in department repairs and maintenance. It is for the mine that is in Sasolburg. So we are saying our location is Sasol and our class is welding or whatever it is that it would make sense to your business and your business processes. Then here we have our monthly budget accordingly to say, okay, in the first month we had 10,000, 11,000, third month, and so on and so forth. So you can grow it by specific percentage or amounts and compute it rolling down to the specific months. So you can say I am budgeting on specific budget or on actual or an employee count. Okay. Moving along, if we go to our order entry, this is our order entry. We have what we call here as our transaction templates. We will come back to our transaction templates. Let's just go into our customers. And as you would notice, we do have some specific functions that you can do on the fly on specific modules. So for instance, we are on order entry, but we are able to access our customers. So here, let's just take Sasol mining as an example because we did speak about mining. These are our primary information that relates to the specific customer. You just need to put in customer details. What is the primary contract? This is very important because these are the contacts that will then go into our statements or source documents and all of those. Over and above that, you can put in additional information that is related to the customer. What is the type ID? If there is a GL group that the customer belongs into, you can put it there. Contact list is self-explanatory. It is exactly that. Who do we contact when we are billing, when we are sending or shipping items? And who is our primary contact? If it is the same as the customer, you can select that. If it's any different, then you then do have the capabilities of putting that specific or different contact list. Dunning notices, this is literally where we tell the customer, Mr. Customer, you have orders for 110 days. Can you please advise when you will then be making payment? We will look at this now. As I had mentioned, we do have a collaboration feature. I'll show it to you on a different instance just now. And then restrictions, again, this goes back to saying if you have multiple users who work in different entities, this is where you restrict them. Is it a restricted customer? Are they unrestricted in a sense that we can access them across our entities, or they are restricted to top level and so on and so forth? If we have items that we call something else and our customer calls something different, this is where we would item cross-reference those items. Okay. We will go into this just now when we go into purchasing and accounts. We have also something that we call transaction definitions. What we do then with transaction definition is, if you do remember earlier, I did mention that Sage Intacct is not a blanket approach system. We sit and we understand where your business process is, how you do things, and then we translate that into the system. So for instance, we will make a simple example here. In this example, we are moving from a sales order, doing an invoice, and ultimately creating a credit should there be a need for a credit. But as you can see here, there's different types of transaction definition because each company is different, right? To our transaction definition, we have something that we call posting configuration, where we tell the system, okay, when we are processing this specific transaction, I want you to debit my 12100 accounts receivables control account. Then over and above that, if the item on that specific invoice belongs to an item group called OE subscriptions, I want you to credit that account. If it belongs to inventory or services, I want you to credit the respective credit accounts, right? If it belongs to anything other than that, this is the account that I want you to credit. So this again is a once-off setup. Should there be a change, it's not cast in stone. You can change this accordingly. The system will not erase what you have already processed because we need an audit trail. But moving forward, then it will then affect the account as specified on that, right? And because of those specific transaction definitions, if, for instance, my system moves from creating a sales order, let's just create one so you see those functions or bills accordingly. So now in my business, we do a credit order or a sales order. From a sales order, we can say, this is my account. Let's just say it's Sasol Mining for a lack of a better example. And as you can then notice, most of those details are auto-populating. They are auto-populating based on the details we have captured on our customer master file. Anything that is not auto-populated, you still can go in and populate it. Because we are a multi-currency, or we do cater for multi-currency, you can then decide what is the base currency and the text currency that this specific transaction is on. So for instance, if we are selling gas in this specific company, or let's say it is you're selling gas in this specific company, again, dimensions come in. So then I can say, I want to be buying this gas cylinder in warehouse 100, 200, whatever the warehouse you are taking from. What is the conversion type? Are you doing quantity or price? What is the number of quantities that I want to put on this specific sales order? If you have unit of measure, this is where you select the unit of measure. It will automatically populate or default to what has been linked to that specific item. But when you are doing a sales order and it's of any difference, you can then select that. What is the price of the gas that you are buying? Let's say it is 1,000 Rand. Your base price will be whatever the price per unit is, and then your extended price is what your price multiplied by the quantity that you are buying. Again, you are able to then say, I want to see my item details here. It will give you your item details, what is the terms, what dimensions is that item located to, and so on and so forth. You are able to then save it as a draft to post later, or post to go into the next document. So when we go into our sales invoice, because of the transaction definition that we have set up, you then are able to convert your sales order transactions into an invoice. From there, you can convert that into either a credit, should there be a need to. You are also able to do payments from the screen for anything that was partially converted or fully converted. You then can print or send an invoice. So for instance, if we are to convert this specific document, because it's already in an invoice state, you then would need to convert it into a credit memo. So if we just add here, I just want you to see how our sales invoice looks like. Not much is different. So it's still the same details. You select your customer, some of the details will auto-populate. If you do select dimensions at a document level, that means those dimensions will apply for each and every line. However, you do also have the opportunity to select dimensions per line. Okay. If we just quickly move on to our purchasing, Again, to our purchasing, we have our vendors. And because for us to be able to buy something, we need vendors to buy from, and we need inventory to buy. Either it's service or tangible inventories. In this case, let's just take Afrox as our example. Afrox is our vendor. These are the vendor details and primary contact details that Afrox is provided with. Additional details, these are billing details to this specific account. Payment information, you can then say, Afrox is our preferred supplier and our payment priority is urgent or high, normal or low. It depends on the business and what your business processes are. You can then say, I want to restrict this specific vendor to a specific entity, or I want them to be available. The item cross-reference, we can then say, okay, from Afrox, internally, we are buying argon gas. It could be different per specific industry, but what Afrox calls it is welding gas. Then that's where the cross-reference comes in. Then if you have a new employee who's new, they are not sure what argon is or welding gas is, they are limited to making mistakes, because then here the system then gives them exactly what we call it internally compared to what our supplier calls it, right? You can duplicate a supplier if you have a supplier with similar details or similar information. And I just want to go back here. And we also have an attachment functionality where you can attach different documents to that specific supplier. Here we have attached the BEE certificate. And as you can see, we can attach more than one document to our supplier. If I click on it, that's how our BEE certificate looks like. You can attach anything. If you have assets, you want to attach warranty documents, you can do that. If you are in a transaction and you want to attach supporting documents, you also can do that. In this specific example, we are attaching a BE certificate and it will be assigned to our supplier. We do have supplier approval processes that you can go through. And as you can see here, our transaction templates are way more than what we had on order entry. And that stems from our transaction definition. A transaction definition, again, it's where we understand what your business processes are. From understanding that, we can then say, okay, this is how we can translate it into the system. So for instance, if we go into that, we still do have a posting configuration. And as you can see, it's a lot more to what we had on our order entry. Reason being, you can add more even on order entry. We just want you to make sure that you are posting into the correct contra account and the users don't have to, because I could be in operations and transacting the procurement side of things, but I don't know what is the GL leg that needs to be affected. So we set that up once. And again, it's not cast in stone. Things do change. We live in an evolving world. Should these change, you can then come in and change. But I, as a user, don't need to worry about any of these because we have specified them on the system. You can specify as many as you would like, and then the system will then know to say, this is how I transact and process those transactions. Again, here we're saying to the system, we are moving from a purchase requisition, and this is how the purchase requisition looks like. Here, everything is a 0 because we have not added any lines. So the system has not calculated any subtotals or item totals or transaction totals. Again, if we do select our Afrox as our vendor, most of these information will auto-populate based on what has been captured on the master file. If there are any different, you can still change them accordingly. Okay, then our payment terms, our expiration date. If you have a shipping method that you would like to specify, you can. Then you can say here, our item as we are now purchasing an argon gas. Then you can say the cross-reference ID is welding gas for the supplier. It literally can be anything. I'm just making an example with a company that supplies gas. It can be anything. Then here with the cross-reference. So your source documents are entirely up to you and what you want to see. You can add logos, you can add fields on that if you want your supplier to be able to say, when I want to print it to the supplier, I want this welding gas to be there. so they know exactly what I am talking about. You are able to then do that. Then you put in the quantity you're purchasing, what is the unit of measure, the price, and then your extended price will be your price multiplied by your unit of measure. Then you can submit it or save it as a draft. Because we do have approval policies, let me just show you a couple that we have. We have approval policies for your purchasing. You can then select a transaction definition that you are assigning that approval policy to. In this case, let's say it is a purchase order. You can say, I want you to do a value approval because I wanted to say every time there is a purchase order over 10,000 Rand, it needs to go to the specific manager. Alternatively, I want you to do a progressive one where you tell the system if it's 10,000, NEO approved, can approve. If it's 12,000, it needs to go to your Han. If it's 30,000, it needs to go to Mpo or Gary, and so on and so forth. And it is not limited to that. You can also do a department approval to say if it's for the specific department, I want it to go to approval. If it's an employee or a transaction department approval, you are able to do, all of that. So hypothetically, we have put in our transaction, we've put in our code and our order. Now we need to then go and approve. Let me just go to approve transactions. If we go to approve transactions, these are all the transactions that were submitted for approval. If we just view this specific one, for instance, it was submitted for approval. It goes to the next level of approval or the next level user that needs to approve. They get this and then they can see this is the transaction, who was it, who was the vendor, what are the payment to or pay to details, and so on and so forth. Now, because I want to approve, I can then say, before I approve this transaction, I want to then see, can I approve or can I reject, right? Then you say to the system, I want to say my show spend insight. So what show spend insight does is that it literally shows you where we are standing. Remember, we would have put in a budget. That budget would have been allocated either to a department location or GL account. So let's say in the specific example, that budget was then said, if I am transacting in account 300, which is admin, for location USA 1, it can be whatever location, for that specific GL account. My budget was 75,000. We have to date actually used 90 odd thousand, and our committed expense over and above that is 500. This specific transaction we are making is 440, which then means my funds available are in a negative. As the approver, I can already make a decision saying, I am going to either approve this on merit, depending on whatever the merit is, to say this specific transaction we cannot reject. I am approving it on merit, and then it goes through. Or I can say, we are over budget. The funds available are way above what we had already budgeted. So therefore, I am going to decline. So you then can be in a better position to say, I'm either approving or declining based on the specific transactions that we, or specific budget amount that we would have sent to that. If we go and then go back to our purchasing, and just so you see how your purchase order looks like, then your purchase order source document is almost the same as your requisition, really. You then just decide who your vendor is that you are providing for, and then the details will then auto-populate. To that, you can say, okay, I want to buy a server, and then you can then say if the server has a cross-reference ID, you select it, and then you can select your dimensions accordingly. Which warehouse does it belong to? What is the conversion type, the quantity that you are buying, and the unit of measure thereof. Okay, while we are on the purchasing side of things, I just want to show you, and I think earlier when we started the conversation, I said I look at it as a smart system which has AI and machine learning. So what we also do have in Sage Intacct is something that we call AP automation. If I can just find my accounts payable. In the AP automation, what the system then does is it of doing it. You can either upload the document if you have access to the system, or you can send an email to the designated email address. So the email that is sent, it does not only necessarily have to be sent by internal staff. It can be sent by your vendors to say, this is the invoice. They send it to the designated email address. Then what the system then does is it reads information or reads the fields that were sent on that PDF file and then creates an invoice for you automatically. So in this specific example, this is the invoice that was either emailed or uploaded. Then the system has then created an invoice. And as you can see here on top, we have a warning field and we have an error field. A warning field literally tells us that the transaction date is prior to the actual date. And the error message then says, hang on, I could not read who the supplier was. But the beauty about this is that the system does not completely reject it. Instead, it captures what it can, then it flags what it can't. So then as a user, you can then say, okay, we are in 2025. I want to change the posting date, or I want to leave it as it is because I'm backdating my transaction, provided those transaction periods are open. And then when it comes to the error, it says the system said, I cannot read who John Smith is or whatever it is. Then you can then still go manually select whoever the supplier was. Then once that is selected, you can then post for approval or save as a draft to post later. If you do have a lot or a higher volume of invoices that you need to process, then the system can then do this. We guarantee you at least 2 to 5 days in a month. We are saving you at least 2 to 5 days in a month. Over and above that, we also have our machine learning, where the system then reads the pattern of processing from users. So for instance, in this specific example, let's go to general journal. In this specific example, the system then learns how your users are processing specific transaction. So let's say you have a rental expense transaction, just as an example, that you process at 5,000 every month. But for whatever reason now, this specific amount, okay, let's make a sales example. You have a sales transaction that goes into that criteria and you pay for it 5,000 in each month. For whatever reason, this month you are now paying 1,200 Rand. The system then does not post this transaction for approval or post it. It says to you, hang on, something is not right. Then it flags the transaction, says unusual historical matches were found. If you hover over that outlier, it tells you the amount is unusual. So we have a set of business rules on the system where you can then tell the system, should you find an outlier, carry on processing, or I can override it, or stop it, or just warn me, and then you can still go to the next level. Based on those business rules that you would have set when you are configuring your system, you can then say, I'm happy with my 1.2, I want to resubmit, or let me save it as a draft for now until I figure out what's going on. Then you correct that and then you send it. Over and above this, we have something that we call, let me just go to that. We have something that we call, let me just find it in the wrong website. We have something that we call smart events and smart rules. This is where you would then tell the system to do specific events or read specific rules for specific actions. So for instance, if you have a set of statements that you would need to send at a specific point in time, you would set it up on the smart rules. So I just wanted to mention that while we were still there. Let's just go back here. With your accounts payables, again, you are able to process bills. You can do automatic payments on the system, or you can do manual payments and manual bills on the system. Moving along in the interest of time, we will move to our inventory control. So in our inventory control, let's say, for instance, we are still using the example from the gas company. We have an item that we call Sorry, let me just find the name. We have an item that we have internally that we call argon gas cylinder. This is our item detail. Again, you are able to attach details to this. You can attach a serial number, lot tracking, bin numbers. We do cater for that. If you want vendor history based on what has been bought from that specific vendor, you are able to do that. I think in most of our systems, we have an inquiry, but we don't have a specific vendor history, then you would still be able to do that. Here again, we have a cross-reference to say this is the vendor ID we are then purchasing the specific item from. We call it argon gas, but our cross-reference ID is welding gas. What is the item attributes? If you have any unit of measures that you would need to assign to that item, you can obviously do that. Again, this is the inquiry on all the transactions that have been related to that specific item. To that, we have warehouses that you are able to link to your items. And the most beautiful thing that we have on Sage Intacct is that within your warehouse, you can then say, okay, I have a bin ID. This item belongs to zone 5, zone 4. It belongs to aisle 5. It belongs to row number 15. And I like to make the example that when I go to Checkers and I don't know where to find my toiletries, I just ask the staff, where do I find a toiletries? And they say aisle 15. And to aisle 15, when I get there, it's not like I'm only going to find Nivea on there or Sunlight or Dove or whatever it is. I find a couple of items in that row specifically packed in specific aisles or in the aisle, specific rows, specific zones. If you have different bin locations, then they would be allocated to that bin location. We also have warehouse transfers. If you are transferring between your warehouses, if you're transferring between warehouse 1 and warehouse 2, let's just create one so you see how it looks like. We have your warehouse transfer details. What is the date of the transfer? From which warehouse are you transferring? To which warehouse are you transferring? The reference in the description. Which item are you actually transferring? I just want to quickly pull over a different instance where we can talk more about items. So that would typically be our warehouse transfers. And to that, we have normal items. So let's just take one. If, for instance, we take a camera item. So when you have our inventory control management, this is what you will typically see on your item master file. So the system says to you, okay, I have 75 on hold. Available is 48. It is 48 because then my reserved stock is 4. So reserved is anything that has been reserved to an order but has not yet been picked. Allocated, we have reserved and picked it. Uncommitted is anything which is your available minus your reserved and hold and allocated. So you then know uncommitted, I have 118 items that I can work with of this specific camera. These are literally your item master file details. Which warehouses does it belong to? Then you can see your warehouse details. In warehouse 1, I have 97 on hand. In warehouse 2, I have 25 on hand, and so on and so forth. Everything here is all that we had looked at on the other side. This is what we call it. This is what our vendor calls it on their side. And then over and above that, we have something that we call fulfillment. And on our fulfillment screen, we have all orders. So all orders gives us everything that is part of fulfillment, regardless of the status. However, if I go to my pick tab, the pick tab will only show me all orders that have the status either ready to pick or have been picked, right? To this, you can assign a specific user to pick. You can then say, okay, for the specific line, I want Emma to pick this. If you had previously selected a user to pick, you can override that specific user. And then once you are ready to pick, you can just go onto the line hyperlink and then select the quantities that you are picking. In this case, you only have one to pick. You can then say, I have picked that specific one. Then once you have picked it, you can then change the status to picked or ready to be packed. Once you change the status to pack or ready to be packed, that specific order will move from here and will go to your packing list. Then you are able to do the same. Click on the hyperlink, select the items that you have packed of that specific item, and then it will move to be shipped. Again, you don't have to worry about having to go through all of this because if your company, for instance, only ships and invoices, we are able to, during configuration, take away these two options. But if you are using all of them, or you're not using all of them, but you would still like to see all of them, then you are able to do that. If we go to
Leo,
our shipping, yes, hi,
I'm
Leo,
so sorry to interrupt.
not a
We
problem.
are running very close to our scheduled time.
Yes.
Can you please just give me an indication of how much is left for the presentation, so that the clients can see if they have enough time? Otherwise, I would just like to advise the clients that we will send a full recording of a session afterwards for those that need
Yeah.
to leave.
Okay. So this is our last portion. So I can say plus minus about 15 minutes left of my presentation outside the Q&As and stuff. So I don't know if the clients would either rather we go into Q&A and whatever is left we do after, or should I just quickly finish and then actually 15 is a long time, about 5 to 10 minutes, and then
Okay.
I'm done on my side.
I think that's fine. Please continue.
Okay, perfect. So quickly moving to our shipping screen again, because Sage Intacct is a global solution, you will notice that they use a different jargon to what we use at home. So they would say shipping. In our case, we would probably use a delivery note. We can still rename that to make sense to our business at home. In this case, we will just leave it as shipping so it makes sense to everybody. And to that, you would also see that we have now an extra button that we call a convert button. So from us, once you have done a delivery or shipping, you can then say, okay, now I want to convert it into an invoice. Then the system gives you an opportunity to then say, okay, these are the details that I would still like to put across. Then it will then put across. You can then change whatever you need to change. Then you can post for a shipping. Again, you can do a bulk convert, which obviously means you need to select a couple of items that you would need to convert. Then you can convert it into an invoice. Here you are able to do your filter set. If I'm the user who does shipping, but I know I only work in warehouse one, I am able to change all of that to say I want to be able to see warehouse one, and the details that I will be able to see is only warehouse one. Then once you've converted, it goes to an invoice. Then you are able to process your invoice from there. From this, you can either convert from if it says ready to invoice, you can convert from the shipping into a specific invoice. Over and above that, what I wanted to show you is our replenishments to inventory. Everything else is still self-explanatory. But with the replenishment, this is where you set in your minimum and your maximum reorder levels to say, okay, these are the items that I have set my minimum and reorder levels. We can say for that security system, my lead time is 45. Your lead time would then stem from your vendor or your preferred vendor to say they deliver within 45 days. My inventory need is 80. However, on hand, I only have 13, which then means I need to order 68. My purchase price is 1,000. Then the system will say, okay, you need to order 68 with a purchase price of 1,000, which means your extended amount is 68, which is that multiplied, your 1,000 multiplied by the quantity. Then you can say to the system, I want to then create a purchase order. So you don't need to go and create a individual purchase order. The system will then create a purchase order for you. You are able to create a purchase order for all of that, or you can do individually as according to what you would need to create a purchase order from. I think that's the most important things from my side, Johan, so I can hand it back to you and then we can take it from there.
Thank you so much, Niu. Sure, it was
No problem.
definitely very, very detailed, very well explained. I think it gave us a very, very good look at Sage Intacct's core functionality. We are going to move over to the Q&A session. We have one question thus far. If anybody else has a question, please post it in the next minute or two. Jenny, I'm going to ask you to read out Vaughn's question, just so that it has the correct context.
100%. So Neo, Vaughan and his company use the standard bank BOL formats, which can't currently be set up on bank feeds to import into their Evolution cash books. Do you know if that's a format that is available on Intacct? Neo?
Sorry, Jenny.
Sorry. Did you hear the question?
Sorry, Jenny, can you please repeat it for me? Sorry, I lost a bit of connection there. It says Vaughan can't use. What are they currently using? Which bank are they actually using, so we can then take
Standard bank, but they use the BOL format. BOL format. So that's a specific type of bank account, as I understand it. And that cannot currently be imported into their Evolution data. Yeah. So just the question, is it available on Intacct?
So my question to that is there's two parts to it, right? Because the bank is giving us the file. Remember, with Sage Evolution, we need to meet specific criterias in terms of what is compatible to, let's say, the CSV file we have says I can only accept reference, I can only accept account number, or whatever it is, just as a typical example. However, because in this case, the bank is sending it directly to Intacct, I don't think we would have incompatibility issues, right? Because the bank is saying, these are your debits, or these are your deposits and payments from us. We are dumping it into Intacct, and then from then the Intacct will then match it to the credit and deposit, the debit and credit transactions on the system. I don't think we will have those issues because we are receiving it directly from the bank instead of us having to.
I get what you're saying. I think it's something that we need to investigate, because the reason that it can't currently come into Evolution is not because of the format, but because of the fact that you need multiple users to be authenticated, as I understand it. So, yeah.
So it's definitely something, yes, we can test. I don't think it should be an issue on our side.
Perfect.
But let's rather test it, and then we can get back to you with information.
That's great. Thanks very much. Vaughan, we'll let you know what the results of those tests are as soon as they're run, okay?
Vaughan also asked a question, how does it get the info via API?
I think they're exporting and importing. Vaughan, please do hold me truth.
Perhaps I can hop in here. It's just the normal bank feeds functionality. I'm not sure whether that works via API or not, Neo. I think that's the question.
So our bank feed does not really necessarily use an API because we are connecting to the bank, right? Directly. And when we connect into the bank directly, we don't have access to your bank. And I think that's where most of our users are like, whoa, what are you doing on my bank? No, we don't have access to the bank. We are connecting to the bank to be a receiver. So the bank will then send us those statements instead of you having to either download them from the bank and then, or upload them and import and download and all of that. And having been a Sage 200 user for the longest of time, I know it was a manual process in a sense that we would have to get a file. From that file, we put it into our bank manager. And then from the bank manager, we rely on the mapping to say, okay, this is how we've mapped it. but it also wasn't as efficient as Intacct would have been. So it's not really an API. We are connecting to your bank. Let me actually just connect to one of the banks so I can show you how it looks like. We can take it the next question in the meantime, then we take it from there.
It doesn't look like we have any other questions. If there is questions, please post them. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so in the meantime, while we wait for that, I think we did go through the screen, but we moved from it very quickly. So in our case, we are in South Africa. Then I say, okay, Absa is the bank that I would like to connect to. Hit say continue. Then there will be a couple of details that you would need to put through, like your PIN and whatever their account is. Then, as I have mentioned, you can have multiple banks in the company. Then once the multiple banks in the company have been set up, you can then put in all these details, then you submit. When we are submitting here, we're not necessarily connecting to your bank to make any payments. Yes, you can do automatic payments from your AP, but we're not connecting to your bank in any way. So this bank is now feeding those bank statements into Sage Intacct. So it eliminates that step of you having to now download the bank statement, from downloading the bank statement, importing it into Bank Manager. I'm not sure what Sage 50 uses, importing it into Bank Manager, and then from there, matching those transactions. So the system will automatically do it. Once it's imported, then the system will match your deposits and your payments to your credits and debits. And then whatever it cannot match, that's where we now go back into the bank reconciliation. Then you can manually reconcile those transactions. Does that answer the question? Hi, Leo.
I think it does.
I'm not sure
I
if
think
we
it does.
have any other questions.
No, we do not have any other questions. Stop sharing. Sorry about that. We do not have any other questions. So we are at the end of our session for today. Thank you so much for everybody's time. I know that we have run over. Just to finish off, if you have any questions, you are most welcome to contact us. The slide is going to pop up now. You can email us at sales@prefsol.co.za for any product inquiries, or give us a call on our central telephone number 021 840 2620. Please note that you will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the webinar recording. There will also be a link to a feedback form where you can post any further questions or request if you want a one-on-one demo session, which will then focus on the specific needs of your business and looking at further functionality for your specific requirements. Neo, thank you so much once again for your time and your detailed presentation. Jenny, thank you for your assistance. I am wishing everybody a wonderful day, and we hope that you found value out of the session. Thank you.
Thanks, Neo. Thanks, everyone.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone, for your time.